Oh, pretty Mecca, what you do for me. I look at you, baby, what do I see? I see the beauty of slavery. Oh, pretty Mecca. Say, baby, I like what you've done with your headdress. What do you say we have a BLT? Me and you. Pretty Mecca, I'm looking for you, baby.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Welcome back, friends, to another program. And by the way, Medina, we haven't forgotten about you. Don't worry, it'll be okay, girl. We're going to learn today about the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's just the perfect wedding of faith and government. They don't believe in the separation of mosque and state. Just ask Granny Jihad.
It's time now for Down Home with Granny Jihad.
Allah Takrapa! Boys and girls, Muhammad said, I have been ordered to fight against the people until they testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that Muhammad is Allah's apostle. Oh, I am filled with joy.
Welcome to today's program. We are doing a special series on the Muslim Brotherhood. If you missed some of the earlier shows, you can get them on voiceofresistance.com. Watch them all. We have moved now to the study of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna. I'll give a quick overview of where we were. This was a young boy, firstborn son, whose dad was a very famous hadith scholar. A hadith scholar is someone who studies the words of Muhammad that are not in the Quran. Right? This dad had an enormous influence on his son. His son, Hassan al-Banna, when he was 10 years old, started complaining about a half-naked lady on the front of a ship. My guess is it was a mermaid, and had it actually removed off the front of the ship. As a teenager, he and his compatriots were in this little secret Muslim group, and they would send letters to adults anonymously telling them to repent for the things that they were doing that were not part of true Islam. And when he was in college, he would literally go into coffee houses, stand up on a chair and preach for 5 or 10 minutes about how great a devout Islamic life was and that you should come back to Allah with your behavior, etc. So when he was in college, besides his mandated studies, he was reading extensively on his own initiative, and he focused on devotional literature, the history of Islam, biographies of Muhammad, the historic tales of heroism and the defense of the ummah, of the homeland, of the political body politic. And he read a lot on struggle, jihad in the path of God. Now, in his final years of college, he read the most renowned authors on Islamic culture, Islamic laws, and civilization. He engaged in intense and often, I think for him, bitterly disappointing discussions with the religious leaders of his day. Leaders that he figured out had lost their zeal to see Allah's true religion reign supreme in the world. Men who had no burning desire to throw off the yoke of their colonial masters. Now, for those of you who are devout Christians, many people grew up in church. They grew up Methodist and became Assembly of God. They grew up Catholic and became Baptist. And There's often this bitter struggle that we go through when we have an eye-opening experience and we really meet the Lord. We have a true conversion. And then we see people around us in the pews who to us seem dead. Think of how many, perhaps you, left the denomination of your youth because you met Christ through people or through literature that really provoked your conscience and drew you to the truth. Well, here's this young man, this college student, reading about Muhammad, the caliphs, the successors, the one Ummah, one grand empire destined by Allah himself to conquer the world. And then he's in college talking to religious leaders and authorities who have no zeal to see Islam prevail. They have no zeal to see Sharia law reinstituted. They have no heart to see true Islam regain its footing and go on about its mission to conquer the world. And so he was bitter. And he turned to the dead. He turned to those who had gone before him, the great heroes of the past. Those are the people that served as his mentors. And many patriots will tell you, I read the works of Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson, then I saw. Many Christians will tell you, I read the book of Acts, I read the Gospels, I read the early church fathers, and then I saw. It's common. The problem is he was following a lifeless, violent religion, but his conscience was so formed by his dad that he thought if he's going to be a good Muslim, he's got to follow the example of Muhammad and the early caliphs, and they conquered the world through the sword. That's what he had to work with. God help us. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll see how exactly he came to the conclusion that he had to start this group and what he did to do it, what he believed, and what their goals were. It's interesting stuff, and it's still going on to this very day. Brought down the Egyptian government, brought down the Libya government, in the middle of bringing down the Syria government. You better believe that the Muslim Brotherhood is to be contended with. And there's really good reason why Muslim leaders who don't want Sharia law and one Ummah and one Caliph, there's really good reason why they keep trying to kill these people and stamp them out. I'll be right back. My wife and I, for 5 years, have been grinding our own wheat and baking our own bread from scratch. Within 2 hours, you can have fresh wheat in your hand and then piping hot bread come out of the oven. The most nutritious and delicious bread you will ever have. And we do it for under $1 a loaf. Call Paula's Bread and find out about this grain mill and the mixer and how it can save you money and change your life. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books, theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last. Welcome back, friend. All right, Hassan al-Banna. He has witnessed the collapse of the caliphate, the end of the caliphate, witnessed the carving up and the prostration of the old glorious Islamic empire to pagans, to infidels, or to treacherous Muslims who are Muslim in name only and don't want to rule according to Sharia law. He knows now that he and other true Muslims have been betrayed and began to see that decisive action was necessary to save Islamic society, as well as envision his role in those actions. One can only imagine what spiritual forces from the dark side were inspiring this poor young man. Anyway, he walked according to the light that he had, and the light that he had was darkness. But he walked, friends. And I want to say this one thing before we keep looking at him. The reason that the wicked prevail in the world so often is because of the fear and the laziness of the righteous, of true Christians. You look at virtually every evil that is engulfing this nation, and you look at the spread of Islam itself. So often there was fear, cowardice, treachery, compromise that led to the defeat and the enslavement of Christians under the banner of Muhammad. And this guy had guts. I want you to know, he had guts. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll let you know. He was ultimately killed by the Egyptian authorities. They murdered him, but couldn't stamp out what he did. Let's talk about it. His biographers record that he was selfless. In fact, they say, quote, he exuded selfless religious devotion and unflagging energy, and by all accounts was preternaturally gifted with remarkable personal charisma, rhetorical skill, and organizational acumen. Those are highfalutin words to say that this guy was a genius and had enormous amounts of energy and was able to recruit people. So from the mind, the heart, and the energies of Hassan al-Banna, a young man, barely 22 years old, who combined devotion with practical action and achievable goals, from this young man, the Muslim Brotherhood was born. His vision for the Muslim Brotherhood was to recreate an Islamic civilization. Al-Banna chose at that time, he's young, got some good advice, bad advice, who knows, but he chose to register the Brotherhood as a benevolent society under Egyptian law rather than a political party. But it was clear from the beginning, from his inception, that he envisioned a restoration of the full political authority of Islamic law. He wrote in the early 1940s, "My brothers, you are not a benevolent society." Now, he had registered as a benevolent society, but then he wrote to him and said, "You are not a benevolent society, nor a political party, nor a local organization having limited purposes. Rather, you are a new soul in the heart of this nation to give it life by means of the Quran. When asked what it is for which you call, reply that it is Islam, the message of Muhammad, the religion that contains within it government." Okay, that's Sharia law, government. If you are told that you are political, answer that Islam admits no distinction. You have to understand, folks, that's critical. He wrote, as Muslim scholars have for centuries, from the dawn of the Islamic era, in Islamic worlds, or in nations rather, that Islam admits no distinction between religion and politics. None. You have the Quran, you have the body politic, the Ummah, you have the Hadith, Muhammad's words and his deeds, and you have Sharia law. It is a package deal, okay? If you want to get air conditioning, you've got to have power windows and intermittent wipers as well. That's how they come. I'm trying to lighten it up. All right, when we come back, we'll look at the growth of the Muslim Brotherhood and the development of jihad in its ranks. Don't go away. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Welcome back to the program, friend. A 22-year-old Muslim young man, barely out of college, repairs watches and teaches elementary school. He creates the Muslim Brotherhood. The founding motto of the Muslim Brotherhood was this: God is our goal, the Quran is our constitution, the Prophet is our leader, struggle or jihad is our way, and death in the service of God is the loftiest of our wishes. God is great. God is great. In Arabic, Allah Akbar. That's the battle cry of Muslim terrorists, Allah Akbar. So that's their founding motto. You have to understand, from the beginning, he knew what he was doing. Now, in the early years, al-Banna's goal was to train young men in the true nature of Islam, to emphasize personal morality, social justice, and education in the governing principles of Islam. And he tried to teach them to become teachers. From the beginning, al-Banna clearly envisioned the full glory and rights of Islam to again dominate the Islamic world, including the restoration of the caliphate. It was not overtly revolutionary in its immediately stated goals in the realm of world politics, okay? But it was, at the beginning at least, it was revolutionary in the interior vision. He was trying to create revolutionaries in their hearts and in their souls, with small clusters of Islamic men who had revolutionary goals for their immediate country. All right? So it wasn't, we're going to take over the world. The beginning was just, let's all be devout Muslims and let's get the caliphate back. Let's get this nation back with a group of, with all so-called Islamic nations back into one nation. We've got to be revolutionaries. We've got to restore Islam. But in a few short years, simultaneously with the growth of the Muslim Brotherhood in numbers and in its community dealings and in its political influence, its political and practical actions and goals began to expand dramatically. Now, in the mid-1930s, they had just over 100 branches in Egypt, all right? Student brotherhood groups were started in universities, which also led to the Muslim Brotherhood branches emerging in several Muslim nations at the same time. Kids would go to these various universities and say, hey, let's start a little college club, the Muslim Brotherhood. Oh, what could be nicer? They were started by students who returned home from school and Muslim Brotherhood training in Cairo. Now in Egypt, because remember, he was based in Egypt. In Egypt, the Brotherhood began holding large demonstrations on behalf of Arab Palestinians. All right? At that time, they did not have, Israel was not a free nation, but there was this movement for Israel to get Palestine back. And so they were having demonstrations saying, we've got to protect the Muslims in Palestine. We've got to stop Zionism. He actually had protests against Zionism. It was at that time that the national liberation, anti-imperialism, and the defense of the Islamic homeland featured more prominently on their agenda. All right? Their vision and actions began to attract the attention of the authorities, both the Egyptian authorities and the British authorities, who still held a lot of power in Egypt. In fact, there was a British intelligence officer who had a very prophetic observation about the Muslim Brotherhood. When we come back from this break, I will read to you his quote, his prophecy. Boy, he was dead on, and there was a lot of dead people too. How would you like to be able to reach hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of potential customers with your product or your company or your web-based business. Well, you can do that right here on this show. Every single day, we get phone calls or letters or orders online from states all over the country where people are watching this television show. Right now, we are seen in 45 cities at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night, and then a rerun again at 12:30 midnight. You can reach them using this show at advertising rates that are so inexpensive, it would blow your mind. So, if you're interested, contact us at the phone number that you see on the screen or the email address, and we can talk about how you can grow your business and help support this show. Welcome back to the program, friend. A British intelligence officer who was in Egypt made this prophetic observation about the Muslim Brotherhood. This is early in its inception. He said, "I consider that the Muslim Brethren Society will, in the course of time, be in a position to produce a reckless and heedless generation who will not abstain from selling their lives cheap, and whose best wish would be to die as martyrs for the sake of God and their country." He was right. I want to say this to you folks. Ideas have consequences. And if you read the words of people, as we're going to see in the coming shows, Albana's words, Said Qutb's words, these ideas have consequences. They end up looking like 9/11, or like the Boston bombing, or the bombings in Spain or London. This is the heart and soul of true historic Islam. And that is what the Muslim Brotherhood is after. All right, let's read the words of Albana himself. Jihad is an obligation from Allah on every Muslim and cannot be ignored or evaded. Allah has ascribed great importance to jihad and has made the reward of the martyrs and the fighters in His way a splendid one. Only those who have acted similarly and who have modeled themselves upon the martyrs in their performance of jihad can join them in this reward. Their pure blood is a symbol of victory in this world and the mark of success and felicity in the world to come. Those are the words of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, and those are the echoes of the words of Muhammad and the first caliphs. What would Muhammad do? Well, that's what Albana wanted to know, and that's what he set out to do. Well, as you can imagine, tensions with the government in Egypt began to rise. Nevertheless, the Brotherhood continued to grow in numbers and influence at a geometric rate through very difficult periods of government aggression and persecution, especially during World War II. In 1936, they had 20,000 members. By 1939, they had 100,000 members. By 1944, they were approaching 500,000 members with some 1,500 branches. The Brotherhood openly sent arms and warriors to Palestine to fight against the Jewish movement for a homeland. Okay? Albana's stated vision was to re-Islamize historically Muslim nations and then to see the authority of Islam expand to encompass the entire world. All right? This is what we are dealing with in the Muslim Brotherhood. If you think that they're just a nice college club or a bunch of Muslims getting together to share in a pig roast, you're wrong. Bye.